On March 8, 2025, students at Ruzhou No. Senior High School in Henan Province staged a protest. The protest was triggered when school officials tried to make students sign a voluntary application to attend weekend makeup classes on Saturdays and Sundays. This angered the students, who tore up their textbooks and demanded to go home. Videos from the scene show thousands of high school students gathered in the hallways of the school, throwing torn-up textbooks and study materials into the air like snowflakes. The floor was covered in paper, and the students, clearly excited, chanted together, "Go home! Go home!" The protest stemmed from a new policy introduced by China's Ministry of Education. In October 2024, the ministry, along with 9 other government agencies, announced that starting from the fall semester of 2025, all public high schools across the country would implement a 2-day weekend system. Early in 2025, several regions began pilot programs for the 2-day weekend and the cancellation of all evening self-study sessions. Ruzhou No. Senior High School officially adopted the 2-day weekend policy at the end of February. However, just 2 weeks later, during a parent meeting on March 7th, the school asked parents to sign a weekend voluntary study guarantee, essentially requiring students to continue attending classes on weekends. This move sparked strong backlash from the students. As of now, Ruzhou No. Senior High School has not publicly responded to the protest. Students criticized the school for lying to higher authorities by faking student consent, manipulating parents, and deceiving students. They claimed that as long as the higher-ups didn't find out, the school could continue making them attend classes for 13 days straight before taking a single day off. One student held a sign that read, "History moves forward. Ruzhou cannot stop the tide of 2-day weekends. Let us go home." The word dictatorship on the sign drew particular attention. Students also arranged test papers to form the message, "I want to go home and have my weekends," while another banner read, "2-day weekends will win." One student posted online saying, "We are the best high school in Ruzhou, and all of us were top scorers in the entrance exam. We're just fighting for the breaks we deserve. We're not the lazy slackers you think we are, and we do well on our exams, but we don't want to live a life where we only get 1 day off after 13 days of classes. If so many people are resisting something, shouldn't we question whether it's right? We want the same weekends off as other high school students." School authorities seem to view the protest as organized. Alongside the signs criticizing the school's dictatorship, a call to action letter circulated among the students. The letter contained the sensitive word uprising and urged students to join the protest. It read, "Sophomores, main campus, have already won the right to go home through an uprising. Do you think freshmen are easier to bully? We invite everyone to gather outside the classrooms at 3:40 p.m. to shout our demands. For our rights, for going home. If we stand together, they can't punish us all. Our fate is in our hands, not the schools." Some online users noted the slogan, "Our fate is in our hands, not the schools," was inspired by the popular line, "My fate is not determined by the heavens," from the Chinese animated movie Ne Zha 2. Ironically, the government heavily promoted the movie as part of a nationalist campaign during the Chinese New Year, but rebellious themes seemed to backfire, encouraging students to resist authoritarian control. By the evening of March 8th, videos of the Ruzhou protest were being widely removed from Chinese social media platforms like Douyin. Some users reported receiving threatening phone calls from authorities after sharing the footage. After the video spread overseas, many people commented on the situation. One person asked, "Has education really reached the point where students absolutely hate learning? Do students really have to protest just to get basic rest?" Some compared the protest to the white paper movement, suggesting that if students held signs reading "Give me liberty" or "Give me death," the message would be even stronger. Chinese commentator Yue Shan said that the government had already announced a policy to fully implement a 2-day weekend for students in the fall, so student protests should not be considered a sensitive issue. However, any form of public resistance can lead to broader associations. Protesting against school authority can be linked to opposing the Chinese Communist Party's rule. The authorities suppressed the incident for 2 reasons. First, it happened during the politically sensitive period of the government's 2 sessions meetings, and they feared it might escalate. Second, they were worried about a repeat of events like the Tiananmen Square protests in 1989 or the White Paper movement in 2022. The Tiananmen Square protests in the summer of 1989 were a major pro-democracy movement that spread from Beijing to the rest of the country, ultimately ending with a military crackdown. The White Paper movement in November 2022 was primarily led by young people protesting strict COVID-19 lockdowns. Protesters even chanted slogans calling for the downfall of the Communist Party and Xi Jinping.
共产党下台！习近平下台！习近平下台！
This movement forced the government to abandon its extreme lockdown policies, but afterward, authorities cracked down on those who had participated. The Chinese Communist Party is now facing a crisis, making it particularly sensitive to the actions of young people. On the night of November 8, 2024, more than 100,000 college students in Zhengzhou rode shared bicycles for dozens of kilometers to Kaifeng, about 50 kilometers away, in a spontaneous youth-driven event. This night cycling trend quickly spread to neighboring provinces and major cities like Beijing, Shanghai, and Nanjing. The government became alarmed, fearing a resurgence of student movements like those in 1989, and quickly responded by blocking roads, locking down campuses, and investigating the event. Recently, Australian-based scholar Yuan Hongbing revealed that since 2024, China's social crisis has been shifting into a political crisis. Reports indicate that in early January 2025, flyers calling for an armed overthrow of Xi Jinping's dictatorship appeared on university campuses in major cities like Beijing, Shijiazhuang, Wuhan, Changsha, and Guangzhou. The flyers were signed by a group calling itself the China Democratic Revolutionary Party. Despite the government's concerns, the student protest in Ruzhou, Henan, was purely about excessive schoolwork and academic pressure. It was not driven by political factors involving the central government. In the summer of 2021, the Chinese government launched a crackdown on the private tutoring industry under the pretext of reducing students' academic burden. This led to around 10 million people in the tutoring industry losing their jobs, and many private tutoring institutions shutting down. However, students' workloads did not decrease. Instead, after-school tutoring simply shifted from private institutions to additional classes held by schools. The government has officially banned schools from organizing extra classes during summer and winter vacations. However, in recent years, many schools have continued offering extra lessons with the support of higher authorities, and not all parents oppose the practice. In theory, a 2-day weekend has been in place in China for nearly 30 years, but in reality, it has been altered, especially for high school students. Whether students should have 2 full days off each week remains controversial, as it involves the interests of students, schools, teachers, tutoring institutions, and parents. China's college entrance exam system is based purely on test scores, making the competition extremely intense. For years, many high school students have had only 1 day off per week, or even just 1 day off every 13 days. Some schools have gone as far as allowing only 1 day off per month or scheduling extra classes during school breaks. Students wake up early and study late into the night, often sacrificing sleep and experiencing extreme stress. Some parents who support extra tutoring worry that if their child does not attend additional classes while others do, it could put them at a disadvantage in the college entrance exam. Observers believe that the root cause of the issue lies in the rigid exam-oriented education system in China, and the deliberately cultivated culture of unhealthy competition and utilitarianism. On March 7, 2025, students at Donghua Senior High School in Guangdong Province erupted with excitement after receiving the news that they would finally have 2-day weekends. In a viral video, students can be heard shouting, "Do you know how I survived these 3 years? 3 years of single rest days. I'm free now." The video, which spread to overseas platforms, drew comments like, "They're happier than prisoners getting their sentences reduced. The education system in China is truly tragic." However, the excitement was short-lived. On March 8th, the school sent a message in parent chat groups requiring parents to enforce mandatory weekend study sessions and ensure that students remained at school. Similar student protests have been occurring across China. On January 18th, thousands of students from 3 high schools in Jiangsu Province successfully forced school administrators to cancel expensive winter vacation tutoring sessions. At Xinhua No. 1 High School, large groups of students gathered at the school gate, holding banners and chanting slogans. Eyewitnesses reported that the protest became intense, saying the barbed wire fences were torn down, the whole building shook like an earthquake, and some students smashed glass and burned paper. In Jiangsu Province, extra classes are widespread. Middle and high school students typically study from 6 or 7 a.m. until after 10 p.m., with high school seniors facing nearly 11-hour study days. A second-year student from Sihong High School in Jiangsu revealed that these extra classes are sanctioned by the county's education bureau. During the 3 years of strict zero-COVID policies between 2020 and 2022, schools were under tight government control, often triggering student backlash. Even after these restrictions were lifted, the Chinese government has maintained strict oversight of students, leading to frequent clashes between schools, students, and parents. On March 2, 2025, a large-scale student protest broke out at the Jingfeng Peninsula campus of Shantou No. 2 High School in Guangdong Province. The incident was sparked when senior students returned late from an off-campus English listening and speaking exam. Due to the distance of the testing site, they missed the school's mandatory Sunday evening 6 p.m. check-in deadline. According to school regulations, late arrivals would result in point deductions and could even affect graduation. In response, hundreds of students forcibly dismantled the school's electronic folding gate to enter the campus, while others climbed over the school walls. Reports indicate that the school called the police, and many students faced repercussions afterward. Videos of the protests were swiftly censored across all domestic platforms. In recent years, Chinese Communist Party leader Xi Jinping has repeatedly called for schools to intensify ideological education, emphasizing political indoctrination through mandatory thought and politics classes. During the recent CCP 2 sessions meetings, Xi Jinping once again stressed the need to integrate these ideological classes with broader social education to cultivate a new generation of loyal Red successors. At the same time, the government has restricted the use of foreign textbooks to ensure that students remain confined within the ideological framework defined by the CCP. An overseas commentator remarked, "I just don't understand. How can students and parents in China not see it? What's the point of this kind of brainwashing education?" The CCP's distorted educational system has led to extreme academic pressure, especially for high school students. On March 7, 2025, a Shanghai-based user on Weibo revealed that 3 students at her child's high school had died within just 2 weeks, but these incidents were swiftly censored by the authorities. The comment section of the post was filled with similar stories from other users. The CCP recently announced that starting from the fall semester of 2025, all public high schools will implement a full 2-day weekend policy. Some netizens suspect this move may be a response to the increasing number of distressing incidents among students. However, many parents remain skeptical that allowing 2-day weekends will alleviate student stress. One parent remarked, "I support mandatory 2-day weekends, but I know it will only address the symptoms, not the root cause. The pressure of the college entrance exam, Gaokao, is still there. These kids have it so hard." Others question the value of education itself in the current climate. One user commented, "Even with a degree, you might still end up unemployed, so what's the point of studying so hard?" Another added, "The pressure from the Gaokao is tied to the tough job market. Unless the employment situation is solved, everything else is just surface-level reform." Over the past few years, as China's economy continues to decline, young people have found it increasingly difficult to secure jobs. This, combined with the CCP's monopolization of resources and opportunities by government officials, has made life even harder for ordinary citizens. A netizen who calls himself Insanity is a Master of Translations graduate from Peking University. He recently published an article on Zhihu, The Rise of Uselessness of Education Theory Again. The piece highlighted how people in rural China are losing faith in higher education as a pathway to a better life, a topic that sparked widespread discussion in academic and media circles during the Chinese New Year period. Professor Huang Lifen at Shanxi Normal University further elaborated on this trend in an article published by Chinese media. She revealed that there's growing sentiment again in rural China that education is useless. This manifests in 2 key ways. Some students drop out to work, while others, particularly girls in large families, are forced to quit school due to limited educational resources. This growing difficulty faced by graduate students in finding employment only reinforces this belief. Professor Huang, who hails from Hubei Province in central China, noted in her observations that some rural families are now choosing not to send their children to university altogether. According to Professor Huang, the growing belief in the uselessness of education in rural China is not due to a rejection of knowledge itself, but rather a reflection of how the form, content, and cost of the Chinese education system fail to meet the needs of rural families. Students from impoverished backgrounds find it difficult to compete with their wealthier peers, even at elite universities. Additionally, while vocational education has produced a large blue-collar workforce, rural families are skeptical that such training can genuinely improve job prospects for young people. This crisis is unfolding against the backdrop of a slowing Chinese economy, soaring youth unemployment, and fierce competition with the United States in key technological fields. The Chinese Ministry of Education estimates that 12.2 million college students will graduate this year. In July 2023, the National Bureau of Statistics reported a youth unemployment rate of 21.3%. However, after adjusting its methodology to exclude final-year university students seeking employment, the official figure dropped to the low teens. Some experts believe the real youth unemployment rate exceeds 40%. A 2024 report from a private Chinese job platform indicated that the employment rate for recent college graduates is only 55.5%. On March 7, 2025, a social media user claiming to be a faculty member at a Shanghai university revealed that the employment rate for graduates from the foreign language department was just 7.7%, with only 9 out of over 100 students securing jobs. While the user did not disclose the specific university, speculation suggests it may be East China Normal University, Shanghai Jiao Tong University, or East China University of Political Science and Law. One blogger cynically described Chinese university as the biggest Ponzi scheme of modern China. In a viral post, they remarked,
"Every year, millions of new students flood in. Professors drone on using PowerPoint slides from the last century, while students in the back row scroll through short videos. This unspoken performance props up the entire local economy. Bubble tea shops, rental apartments, and the servers for honor of kings. Around campuses, the commercial ecosystem is built on draining seniors dry through exam prep programs. Study abroad agencies exploit middle-class families, and even the campus printing shops rake in millions from poorly written thesis papers. Deep down, everyone knows the truth. Universities have become nothing more than a greenhouse to delay the employment crisis by 4 years. Once you step into the real world, you realize your salary can't even match that of a delivery driver. What's worse is the endless inflation of academic credentials. 20 years ago, a vocational degree could land you an office job. Today, even a master's degree from a top university barely qualifies you to compete for a city management position. Universities increasingly resemble a Ponzi scheme that constantly requires fresh blood to sustain itself. Ironically, computer science students become the tech industry's workhorses, while media students fuel the short video boom. The one thing this system doesn't want is people who can think independently.
Over the past 2 years, there's been a huge surge in reports of graduates from prestigious universities working as food service staff, running street stalls, or delivering takeout. The term full-time children, a euphemism for unemployed young people who stay at home to care for their parents, has gained traction as the government attempts to downplay rising social discontent. According to official data from the National Bureau of Statistics, by the end of 2024, more than 200 million Chinese workers were classified as being in flexible employment, accounting for nearly one-third of the labor force. While the figure is framed as evidence of a thriving gig economy, outside observers argue that it masks a far more troubling reality. Flexible employment is simply a sanitized term for widespread underemployment and joblessness.